Hello, this is Domenico with Easynomics, and this is part two of a video dissecting a paper two type of exam. The content that we covered here could be useful as a real-world example for paper one and also provide some insight into dissecting articles for an internal assessment. In the previous video, which will be linked in the video notes below, and for those watching on desktop, there'll be a pop-up in the top right corner. We were looking at the Russian-Ukrainian war and its impact on the global market for petroleum. We can see that in February of 2022, there was a spike in petroleum prices going from about $85 a barrel to about $120 a barrel approximately, staying above $100 a barrel. And then since then, it's been collapsing. And perfectly competitive market models can explain why the price has fallen. And in another video, that will be an explanation that's provided. But here we're looking at this rise in price. In the video notes below, there'll be links to the articles I used to design my paper two exam back in June, which includes this Bloomberg article, solutions highlighted in this English online news article for Catalonia, reflecting the Spanish central government's application of a per unit subsidy to reduce gasoline and transportation costs, and also another article about Spain and perhaps the possibility of reducing indirect sales taxes to reduce consumer prices to tackle inflation. So those links will be below. So let's take a look at the question that we're going to cover in this video. In the previous video, we tackled this question, looking at the PED for petroleum and the relationship between price and total revenue. In this video, we're going to tackle this second part here. And here it says, let's highlight this, using an appropriate market supply diagram that illustrates the relationship between price and quantity supplied. Explain the factors that determine the PES. So we need to explain the factors that determine the PES for the production of primary commodities such as petroleum. Okay, we can refer to text A, paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. So you should first think that as an economist, if it's a primary commodity like petroleum, it's very probable, highly likely, that the PES will be inelastic. So let's look at the article here. Of the three paragraphs, it highlights that there is a scarcity of refining capacity, and that is a determinant for the PES of the supply curve. The level of spare capacity within the PES, within the supply curve, will determine the elasticity of the supply curve. And so here they're saying that there's very little capacity left, almost perhaps at full capacity. So the supply curve is going to be very inelastic. Again, in paragraph 3 here, it says no refining capacity, that they're at full capacity. So PES is going to be inelastic. So those are two key points that can link to the determinant of supply that can help our explanation of why the supply curve is inelastic. So let's go ahead and illustrate this. So reviewing determinants of PES, they include length of time, the time it takes to find and extract that primary commodity, mobility of factors of production, how quickly can the firm employ resources and switch production from the production of one type of output to another, spare capacity, right, which is the issue that's determined the PES for petroleum. So this is definitely going to be the aspect here. The article's highlighting that oil refining firms are at full capacity or near full capacity. So the PES is going to be very inelastic. Ability to store stock. Do these oil refining firms store barrels of oil? Do they quickly sell them off at the world price market, at the price in the world market, and the rate at which costs of production increase? This is the key determinant here, spare capacity. So PES as a formula, you should know, is equal to the percent change in quantity supplied divided by the percent change in price. Oops. Let me just put the percent change in there. Okay. And you should know, higher level students, standard level students in general, even though standard level students are not technically required to know for their, according to the IB guide, but I would stress that you should know this anyway. Primary commodities have a PES value that's less than 1 in the vast majority of cases. In addition, the PED value, as we covered in the previous video, is also less than 1. So primary commodities have very inelastic demand-supply curves, which explains the volatility of resource prices. Primary commodities specifically. Again, if we look at any type of primary commodity, we're going to see that prices are very, very volatile. They're constantly changing over time. They go up and down, up and down. And that's a result of the PED and the PES being less than 1. So let's illustrate this for the exam to answer this question using an appropriate model. Here we're going to have a very vertical supply curve. Our supply curve is labeled S1, and it's equal to our marginal costs of production. And then let's start to label some points. So we're going to have an initial price, let's say, of P1 with a quantity supplied of Q1. And then the price rises as a result of the Russo-Ukrainian war, sanctions imposed on the Russian Federation and reducing their ability to export petroleum into the world market. That reduces the global supply and raises price along that demand curve. So price goes up. Oop. And here we have the quantity supplied increasing, but not by too much. P1 to P2. So here we can see that the change in price from P1 to P2 is much greater than the change in the quantity supplied from Q1 to Q2. All right, we're moving along that supply curve from point A to point B, according to the law of supply, but we don't see that dramatic change in the quantity supplied as a result of a change in price. So here we see that the PES is going to be less than 1 for this primary commodity because the percent change in price from P1 to P2 is greater than the percent change in the quantity supplied due to spare capacity. Since these oil producing firms are at or near full capacity, they cannot generate more. They don't have the infrastructure, the tools and equipment to produce more. All of their tools, all of their equipment is all being utilized, so they can't ramp up production quickly enough in the short run. So you can also maybe perhaps in the short run, these firms are not able to increase their capacity. In the long run, perhaps they can invest and build up their physical capital capacity to generate more, but that's going to take time. Okay, just to illustrate our understanding of PES, let's say that the PES is equal to 0.3. What that means is that that is equal to the percent change in quantity supplied divided by the percent change, here I did it again, percent change in price. So to understand 0.3, let's think of it in terms of the equation. So 0.3 over what? Over 1. So for every 1% increase in price, there's only a 0.3% increase in the quantity supplied. Not very responsive. Again, the change in price greater than the change in quantity supplied. So now we can go ahead and analyze this model. In graph B, we're illustrating the global market for crude oil. We're measuring price on the y-axis, quantity on the x-axis. We have an upward sloping supply curve labeled S1, upward sloping according to law of supply, equal to our marginal costs of production. And we notice that the PES is very vertical. PES for primary commodities such as petroleum have a value less than 1, which means that the change in price is going to be greater than the change in quantity supplied. It's difficult for oil refining firms to increase their quantity supplied due to lack of spare capacity, as cited in the article. The article highlights, that in the case of Saudi Arabia, there's a scarcity of refining capacity, meaning that they don't have much room to increase production. Here it says there's no refining capacity, so they're at full capacity. There's no room to produce, so the change in quantity is going to be much less than the change in price. So we have an initial price of P1 with a quantity supplied at Q1 at point A, and due to the Russian-Ukrainian war and disruptions in the global supply of petroleum and reductions in the global supply, that drives price up from P1 to P2. In response, around the world, oil refining firms will try to ramp up their production quickly. As the price has risen, it is incentivizing them because their profit margins will increase, but their ability to ramp up production is limited because they are already at full capacity, which is the determinant of PES. And perhaps length of time in the short run, they don't have the ability to increase their physical capital capacity, so they can only produce so much with the resources and equipment that they have. So price rises from P1 to P2. According to the law of supply, there's an increase in the quantity supplied from Q1 to Q2, which is a movement along the supply curve from point A to point B. Again, we see the change in price greater than the change in quantity supplied. If the PES value is, let's say, equal to 0.3, that would mean that for every 1% increase in price, there's only a 0.3% increase in the quantity of supply. And that's it. We have answered that question. All right. That question asking us to illustrate a supply curve, which we've done, explain the factor that determines the PES, which is spare capacity and perhaps length of time. And we've done it. Okay. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment those questions below. There'll be outlines of the analysis in the video notes. And that's it. Thank you so much. And don't forget to subscribe and to like. Thank you.